Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, K.T.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. We have K.T. Anglehart, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And she is a YA fantasy author. She has 2 books so far in the Scroll series. I think that's correct, right?
The Scottish Scrolls.
Scottish Scrolls. So I can't wait. I'm a big YA fantasy lover, so I want to know all things your series. So where do you want to start? With The Wise One is the first book. So give us a little overview of the world, the characters, their challenges.
Sure. Yeah. My God, ask any author what your book is about, and just like that's the end of that.
Okay, we'll start with the character then.
Okay, I could do that. So main character's name is McKenna. So she's a 17-year-old, I guess normal in the sense, teenage, in the sense, the normal sense of the word, teenager. The book takes place in 1991, and she does have 2 dads. So back then, like, you feel kind of like an outcast, and you're looked at a little odd, like when you're not part of like a, once again, quote unquote, normal like family dynamic. So she's always felt kind of like she doesn't fit in, and not just because of that, just like herself as well. Like she has trouble connecting with people, always that sort of like outside looking in kind of person. Lots of introspection in the first book, and then she realizes from a nightmare she has on her 17th birthday of being burned at the stake that she has some powers that are like waiting to burst. So it's her journey of self-discovery, lots of nature magic, and like finding out who her birth mother is, and like her dad's lied to her about like what really went down and who her mother is. And so like there's that sort of discovery aspect, and it's about found family. She becomes best friends with like an unlikely counterpart. There's like a mysterious guy in the mix, though it's not romantic, but there's like a cute little subplot there. And she heads to Ireland and tries to find out who her mother is and who she really is. So there's a lot of folklore inspired stuff in the magic as well. I don't know if
I
did that.
am just getting goosebumps hearing you talk about that, because my series has a very similar character, although she's a vampire witch hybrid, and she doesn't know who her father is, and she's never met her father or seen her father. Her mother won't tell her who he is, although all she knows is he's a witch because her mother's a vampire by default. But she has the same type of challenge. Like, she doesn't fit in. She's in human high school, and she has to pretend to be normal. And
Right.
then, really finding yourself. Where do you fit? Where do you belong? And then there's this huge curse.
Okay. Yes, there's a prophecy in mind. So there's always those bigger, the bigger challenge, right? Ahead.
I'm loving it.
I love yours too, and I like that. So that's YA as well.
Right. Yes, she's exactly 17 when we start the story too. So I'm like, okay, we're twinning on our books here, and I have to read your book.
They need to, me too. They need to be on shelves together, like on a shelf together. But I just love that that's the self-discovery theme, like is so like prevalent in these books, and I think it's so nice that we maintain that like air of innocence of it, because now YA is such a big category. And sometimes it feels a lot older. So I love the sound of yours. It really does sound like a teenager discovering herself, which is really nice.
Yeah, fun. Okay, so and you said this had, well, it's called the Scottish Scrolls. So what's the connection to Scottish Scrolls?
Right. So yes, the first book, I know I said takes place in Ireland, but there's already a tie-in with Scotland in the first one, and then the second one takes place fully in Scotland. But the Scottish Scrolls are like this ancient. It's like tied to an ancient prophecy, and I can't say more than that. But the person who wrote it is like tied to McKenna, the main character, and I can't say more.
Yeah.
But like, let's just say there's like past life themes involved in the book, and and like thinking you're one thing and end up being something else. And well, this is hard to say without spoiling, but yeah.
Well, fun. That sounds super. Yeah. And I totally get you don't want to spoil things for
Yeah.
the readers who are going to discover everything in your book. So where did the inspiration come from for this book and this idea of the prophecy? And
it's like one thing kind of led to another, but I did know I've always wanted to go to Scotland and Ireland. So while I was doing my master's in creative writing, I had also just gotten married, and we decided for the honeymoon we're going to go to Ireland and Scotland. And I kind of knew, I was like, as I'm writing this book, this is where it's taking place. I just knew I would fall in love with it. And I knew they were like bucket list places, like I had to go. Also, just like really, I'm just like really fascinated by the culture and folklore. And anyway, and then of course, seeing television, you know, the scenery is just going to be stunning. So we went, and I was like just like taking notes like a mad person and researching and talking to locals. Took lots of notes, and then I went back to Scotland another 2 times. So I've been to Scotland 3 times. So it's just kind of, I don't know, the inspiration comes a lot from the landscape for sure, and the folklore I've learned, and just like the wonderful, wonderful people. And the rest, like the plot. I mean, I've always been like into witchy stuff, like from a young age, reading pretty much everything I could about witches and spells, even like just the history of witchcraft, and like all the terrible things that women have undergone. And like that's also a huge theme in my book. Like we talk about figures, like historical figures. Like I used real names that, you know, that were, for instance, someone who was burned at the stake in 14th century Ireland, that sort of thing. So it's all like tied together. I just like kind of saw all the things I loved in one story, and I just put them together. I don't know if that makes sense.
no, it sounds amazing. It sounds like you did so much research for this book too. Is that your ancestry or your heritage, or you just fell in love with it?
No, that's why. I hope the Irish and Scottish do not hate me. But no, that's why I do heavy research, because I never ever want to claim like I know better or anything like that. I'm Italian. I love my heritage. I'm very, very, very proud Italian Canadian. Our food is the best in the world. But I have always just had this thing. It's like just like this fascination with the history and the culture, and that's when I just dove in, bought a bunch of books. I'm like staring at 5 books right now of like what I used to research the second one, the Twin Flame. I have it here actually. This is the sequel to the first one.
Ooh,
And
pretty cover.
Thank you. And it's the first, since I have it next to me. Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like I had a very crazy day today, and I feel like everything's coming out like word vomit. So please let me know if you need me to slow down.
No, I love it. So
Explain
do we have like or can you tell us a particular person, or what is their main challenge? Or can you tell us that, or is that something, or is there an antagonist or a bad guy in this?
There is a bad guy. She's a high priestess. She is obsessed with the outcome of this prophecy and is after her to make sure she kind of fulfills it. Like that's her thing. And there's a lot of twists and turns along the way. I love a good twist. So there's definitely a couple. And you'll be glad the second one is out, because the first one ends on a cliffhanger. So yeah, she's quite something, this high priestess, and she is relentless. Yeah, I don't know what else. Yeah.
What is her name? Because we are still so twinning. We must have the same brain.
Oh my God.
My main antagonist, she's not a high priest when the book starts, but she was a high priest, and her son is now the high priest. Well, she's the high priestess, and her son is now the high priest, and she doesn't want the curse broken, and the other people do, though.
Wow, this is crazy. I think we have the same spark of inspiration. Her name is Maeve.
Maeve. Okay. Mine is Sonia, so different name. So I was gonna, like, if it was the same name, I was gonna say, okay, we must be separated at birth or something.
Well, you know, have you ever read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbreth? I can't pronounce her last name. She's the Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh, okay. Writer. No, I haven't.
It's a really excellent book, and she talks very interestingly about how she believes that there's like these like let's say, balls of inspiration kind of like that hit you. And if you ignore them, this great idea will not get wasted, and it'll just kind of like pass on to the next person and hit the next person. It's very interesting. So like, I don't know, it's possible this spark was like lingering amongst us, and we just like took pieces of it. I don't know.
Right. It must have broke apart and got caught in the wind or something.
But I love how there's still so many differences. Like, of course, there's tropes, and like I've read. I got so panicked once. I had just finished the first book, and then I discovered a book called. It's very popular, actually. Fever, or just, is it maybe just Fever? It's like a fairy. It's pretty like fairy erotica though, which I didn't realize until I researched it later. So I was like, hey, it's nothing like mine. But the main character, I believe her name's McKenna, and she goes to Ireland to find her sister. And I was like freaking out. I'm like, it's so similar sounding, but like it's not, like not even remotely like the same themes or the same story. But like, when you find something so similar in another book. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, why did you decide to call your first book The Wise One?
So it is something that I can't say what it is because it's part of a twist, but it does mean something special. It's something to do with being a witch. And I first came across the term in one of these new age books that I love to read. And I found it very, very interesting. I sort of connected with the term, and I thought, that would be a great thing for a main character to learn she is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a question in my head, and now it just disappeared. Oh well, it'll come back.
It'll come back.
So you have 2 books in the series. Is there another book coming out?
Yes, I'm working on the third. I haven't revealed the title or the cover yet. That is in the works. I keep thinking I'm going to do the title reveal, and then I keep thinking, is that really the title? So I'm giving myself a little bit of grace there, but it'll be out in 2025, hopefully by the end of summer, latest in the fall. So yeah, I think it's a trilogy. I could never say for sure, because then sometimes you just feel like there's a 4th book that could come along. But right now it seems like it'll be a trilogy.
I know. I say every one of my series is a trilogy, and they end up being 4 or 5 books.
Really? So. How many books are you able to like kind of pump out? I'm like a very slow writer.
I usually do 2 a year.
Oh wow. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it depends on how fast I'm writing and how much leeway I want to give for publishing and all those fun things.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I'm way slower than that. I'm like a rewriter, so like my first draft doesn't make much sense. The second one, the pieces come together. The third one, I start to actually write it like sounding better. But like it takes me like so long.
Okay. So do you know when you start writing like the end of your book or where it's gonna end, or does that come along as you're writing?
Not in a concrete way at all, though. Like for instance, the first one, I didn't know it would end at that point. And then like I got the idea for the second one. Like I didn't know writing the first what happened, if it would close, like it would kind of like wrap up nicely, or if it would go to a second one. So that's what ended up happening. But once I loosely outline, when I know I'm writing a book, I'll loosely outline it. So I'll kind of know what's going on. I'll write the main plot points, or else I know it ends up being kind of like a saggy middle. Like I don't trust myself to keep it going without like just a little bit of an outline, right. But not heavy. Like, yeah, I kind of end up changing so much as I'm writing too. I don't know how you.
Yeah, I think I'm similar. I usually know where we're starting, where we're ending, or at least how things need to end for the characters in this book. And then I know like a couple of plot points in the middle, and then I just kind of make all the challenges and the highs and lows to get them where they need to be in the end.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, but I rely heavily on editing too, and like first readers, because sometimes I'm very much in my head when I'm writing. That's why I like talking to people about writing, because people think it's such a, you got to be perfect and the first draft, this and that, and I'm like, no, it can be absolute crap. It can be horrible for a really long time, and then it can be amazing.
Well, and I saw in your bio that you have a minor or something in screenwriting.
I took a graduate certificate in screenwriting. I've always wanted to like have my own TV show. I have like a folder of TV shows in my laptop that would be great if someday someone would make them. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems like it would be cool to convert your novel into a
Yes.
screenplay or a series. It seems like
So
made for TV. I would
that's
watch it.
oh, that's funny you say. So it is. It's actually it is. So I first in my master's I had a screenwriting class, and I first came up with this whole concept as a TV show.
Oh.
And then when I knew the realities of that, and that like it could take 10 years before someone even looked at the script. And then by then I'd be like on to the next 10 things. I was like, you know what? I'm going to I'm going to publish this as a book. And then that's when I expanded. I did more research, and like, I took it in as like a book project, and I made it my thesis since I was in school.
Okay. Yeah,
But
you were way ahead of me. I have no background in writing, so I've taken tons of courses like since I
it's
became obsessed. So
no, it's okay. Like I just did it because I like professionally I was already writing, and I was a freelance editor, and I just kept going kind of thing. Like I didn't think I was like good at anything else. I was like, what am I going to go do? Like I'm just going to keep studying in this. So I just kept
well,
going.
that's great. You can make a living at what you love.
Yeah, but sometimes you're doing like a lot of my work was marketing, and it's like it's not the best working for an agency. It's like a whole other thing, and it could make you hate writing too, like depending. So like it's a lot of fun a lot of the time, but it could be super stressful, and you're writing things you don't care about. So there's definitely the good and the bad that comes with.
And so are you self-published or are you published by a publisher?
I self-published. I did not go traditional. I didn't even like query. I didn't do the agent thing. I kind of, when I knew I was going to make it my thesis, I was so, I was so like focused on getting it like I was so excited about it. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to spend kind of like the screenwriting thing, like a years sending this out, because I get really especially the rejection thing. Like I get really discouraged. So I knew it came with, I knew rejection comes with like all of this, like the publishing industry. So I said, I think it's gonna die if I do this. If I go this route, I'll just like publish it myself so that it comes alive. Like I really wanted it to be out in the world. Like I couldn't shake the feeling that no, this isn't the book for me to send out. I'm like, momentum is here, so let's ride the momentum. But
That's
I would
awesome.
consider going traditional some other time.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine though, I mean, if it was your thesis, you had feedback on the plot and the characters from your professors, from your classes.
She'd been following me for like 3 years. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So yeah, that I'm sure that really helped shape the book and get it, the best it could be too.
100%. The number of times I've called my thesis supervisor crying. I'm like, I can't write this book. Like the first time you ever write a book is like shocking. Like you're so with yourself. You're sitting in your thoughts. You're forced to finish it. You're forced to do as good a job. You're forced to look at the results. It's like such a psychological, like it's a crazy thing that happens that I was not ready for. Thank God I had someone the first time around. Honestly, I needed it. I really needed the supervision. But now it's like, okay, did the second one myself, and like did the third. I'm still slow, but
That's awesome. Everybody has their own like
everyone
system
does.
and what works for them. And I
Yeah.
just remember the question I had. So it's kind of jumping backwards, but why did you choose 1991 to set? Is that significant or?
Because so for a few reasons, and my supervisor said the same thing. She said, I don't get it. She said, why? She said, don't do it in the past, do it now. And I said, no, I don't feel a connection to the now. I really don't. Like the cell phones, the tech, the nose in the screens. And I'm like, it's not about that. When you're writing from a teenager's perspective, you can't not work that in. So that was one of the main things. I was like, I don't want cell phones. I want her to like look inside encyclopedias. That is how she will find answers. I want her to like no MapQuest, back then MapQuest, no Google Maps, no like just like getting out into the world and just finding your way and talking to people. So that was a big thing for me. I'm like, it has to feel like, yeah, like it's not a technological kind of world. And then it ended up working out as I was developing it, because future events, which are now present events, affect the storyline too. So it's like there's a lot of messaging around environmentalism and stuff. So I thought the 90s were a really interesting time because it was like a turning point. And it's like you're conscious of what's going on sort of slowly, and you're understanding like global climate change. And if I were to write that now, it's like, okay, passe, we know that we're killing our planet already. Like, it's like, what's the point? Like, it's kind of like a bit of a tone shift. Whereas there, it's like, wait a minute, something's going on. We need to pay attention to this. And I just wanted to be in that like headspace. Yeah, I don't know. There's a few reasons.
Well, no, that's a great way to frame it. Yeah, it kind of makes me think of like L.J. Smith's Vampire Diaries. And when she first wrote them, it was kind of, it was like 25 years, maybe 30 years ago when she wrote the books. And if you read the books, like there's hardly any technology in them at all. But then, of course, the series is updated and, they have technology. But yeah, so I got around that in my series by making it dangerous for them to communicate via cell phones, because it could be traced, or like in the first book, the character's like trying to hide everything from her mother, and her mother has access to her phone, so she's not going to put anything on her phone, right? So I kind of got around that way. That's so good.
Yeah, I think it's a reader like a, what do you call it, kind of a guilty pleasure. Like, yeah, we're also used to our phones, but don't you love when you read a book where technology like doesn't exist? Isn't it like the best? that is.
Yeah, and I guess like for me too, like all the witch stuff was all written down. They would never put it online because then the humans would find out there would be witches. So they have to go through and research all the witch histories and things like that.
There you go. I love that. Yeah.
So talk to me. I mean, we talked a little bit before we started recording about your idea of magic and witches. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I was thinking of going into that too, and I'm like, how do I do this? But you nailed it. So I like what we were chatting about before. Like, I really like to see magic as something that's just all around us, and it's in nature. That's why I love reading authors like Scott Cunningham, who he called himself a witch, but it's very practical and like realistic. Like we're talking about energy and in the trees, and like like giving an intention away and like into a stream, and then looking at it wash away, like some stuff that makes a lot of sense to me. So that's the kind of magic I believe in: the intention setting, connection with what's around you, and like the empathy we have for other people. Like, pay attention to that, like your intuition. That is very, very magical, and we just like learn to like put in a box, lock it away a lot of the time. That's the sort of thing, that I like to work. Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah, my heart is like full now, because that's exactly how I feel about magic, and sort of like manifesting and putting your kindness out into the world and having it come back, and being in nature and seeing the amazingness of our natural surroundings. So
I call that being a witch. Like, so witches are not necessarily Wiccans. Like Wicca is a religion, or like a very faith-based, like it has its own rules kind of thing. So a witch can be a general term, and I think we're still trying to like decipher what that is. So I like to try to say, like, you're probably a witch and you don't know it. Like, a witch is conscious of all these things and conscious of like who you are, like you as a soul, and you as like coming to make change, and coming to like just like in touch with your spiritual side. I think that's very witchy, like loving herbs and like using them in every day, without even like the way you spice your food, like the feeling you get when you put some rosemary in something. I swear it changes my mood. I throw some rosemary in like a dish, and I just like, I don't know, just like I feel it. Like I don't even know what it does. I just know it does something great. And I think that's being a witch too. So Yeah, I like the idea of tying mysticism with everyday, and I try to make that the magic in the book too, with a bit of more exaggeration, of course, and more like actionable magic because it's a lot of fun.
Right. Yes, you can see it and see why it's manifesting. Yeah. Yeah. So I think of being a witch in magic as a spiritual connection, definitely with people
Yeah.
and with nature and your surroundings and maybe your heritage and your future and things like that. So
Well said. Yeah, I am sure my mom's side is the witchy like side, like also the dreams her, my grandmother, and I've heard my great grandmother they have these like kind of prophetic like symbolic dreams, and they've seen they've seen spirits. I grew up listening to my mom and my grandmother tell stories of like encounters and stuff. I've had them, I blocked them, I was too scared, so now I don't see anything anymore. There's I believe in all sorts of magic.
that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that as far as thinking about like who in my family is really. I mean, my parents are very spiritually religious, religiously spiritual, I guess.
Okay.
But my grandmother was talked in tongues, and she had all these dreams.
Wow.
And every time I went to church with her, it was just like mesmerizing to me that, people in the congregation would just start talking in tongues. And then somebody else would translate what they said. It was just very amazing.
Wow, that is very fascinating. I could almost see that like in a scene unfolding.
Put that in there. I just sort of incorporated some tarot cards in my books too. So
Yes, I have like literally. So there's witchy shelf behind me. Oh, I don't know. It's like a lineup of tarot cards on the top shelf. Those are all my weird books. I call them my weird books.
This is so much fun. So tell everyone where we can find you, where your books are sold, and how we can keep up to date with what's going on.
Absolutely. My website is ktanglehart.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter. You can check out what I write. I just started a Substack, so if you're on there, KT Anglehart. And you can buy my books wherever you get your books online, at whatever your favorite bookstore is. Of course, Amazon is great because everyone loves to send every author loves to send people there because it helps boost their ranking, right? So if you have to choose, sure, that's a great place to buy my books. And yeah, I really like talking to readers. So get in touch with me. Instagram too, KT_Anglehart. Come find me.
Well, fun. Yes, KT Anglehart, the wise ones at ktanglehart.com, right? Is that what you just said?
Oh, my website is ktanglehart.com. Yes.
Right. And so we'll have all your links with the description in the podcast. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks. I can't wait to dive into your books because they really, really, really sound like the perfect paranormal getaway that I need so badly. So
yeah, that's going to be my one click as soon as this is finished. So we will circle back and then we can compare again.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.